I'm trying to draw a distinction between blindness, so we're going to be colorblind when we deal with individuals, and indifference. So we're going to be unconcerned about racial matters as we go about our public business. Blindness, I think, is eminently defensible. I think is what I've been arguing for a long time. Blindness is one thing, but indifference is a completely different thing. DEI is over, John.
Yeah.
What are we going to do, man? I mean, that was our bread and butter, wasn't it? The critique of the DEI excesses.
Yeah, I think the problem with the way it's being discussed is that people are playing a little game. I don't know if they're doing it deliberately, but DEI is a term that I don't think I knew until 2020. And what that executive order of Trump's is doing is eliminating the excesses that we've seen since the George Floyd era, partly. But the way it's being discussed by good people is as if what he's basically saying is that we should not try to work against racism at all, and that what he's trying to do is cancel the Civil Rights Act of 1964, et cetera. And I think that that's a sloppy way of looking at it. I'm fully on board with getting rid of the kind of DEI that is about dismissing whiteness and changing standards in order to have as few white people around as possible. That's what it's been for the past 5 years. And that's got to go, including the struggle sessions, all of the Robin DiAngelo stuff. The question is whether Trumpians need to go as far as, for example, canceling affirmative action. And that's where I think the controversy comes in. And that's where I'm not on board. It's a messy executive order. But the heart of it, which is canceling this nonsense from 2020 on, I'm very much on board with that. What do you think?
Well, what about Black History Month? You want to get rid of that?
No.
Because Pete Hegseth, my understanding reading the Washington Post this morning is that Pete Hegseth has issued a directive that DOD, Department of Defense personnel are not supposed to do their Black History Month thing that they usually do, which is, I assume, a series of events, speakers coming in, and various other acknowledgments of African-American historical experience, narrative, interest, and et cetera. And I assume that's partly for the benefit of the employees of color within the agency, but also meant to be an expression of the agency's awareness of, concerns about, acknowledgement of the issues affecting Blacks. No more Black History Month. You okay with that?
No, and I didn't know about that. But see, there's a fine line on things like that, because nominally what somebody like Hegseth is going after is the kind of history lesson that's designed to make white people feel guilty, and that makes it seem like all of American history has just been one long hit job. That is not what should be taught. But the idea that to have Black History Month is just the way somebody like Hegseth often puts it, is you're stirring that stuff up. I find that blinkered and ignorant. So no, the idea is not that we're not going to pay attention to the history of Black America, including the racism and discrimination that it's involved. Of course, I think both of us have our problems with the idea that that defines what Blackness is, and that that must shape the way we evaluate Black people now. There's a line, but these are not subtle people, and so we have a problem.
Okay, well,
I got fellowships.
How about what?
An organization offers a some kind of fellowship designed for quote unquote minorities. I think that that's fine if an organization wants to do that. That's not stirring that stuff up, and that has nothing to do with Robin DiAngelo and Ibram Kendi. What do you think?
Did you say fellowship?
Yeah. Fellowship.
Like they create a position and they say this is a designated fellowship for African American or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Or even in graduate departments, that there's money set aside for minority students, for example.
I think that's in the crosshairs. I think that's a cousin to having lower standards. I think you could put the question differently. You could say, I have a position which is oriented toward the study of these issues, African American, but it's open to anybody who studies them effectively, regardless of what race they are. I think if you create a position or a graduate program creates a fellowship for students that is race exclusive, that crosses the anti-DEI line and is akin to affirmative action. So I don't have the same problem with that as I have with canceling Martin Luther King Day or Black History Month, because I want to draw a distinction between how people are treated. I have a job to offer. I offer it to the best qualified person, and I don't use a racial test. And how interests are defined. I have a program or a policy that is motivated in part by a reaction to racial inequality or a legacy of the history of racial discrimination or the concerns about the possibility of ongoing racial discrimination. The policy is motivated by an interpretation of history and a kind of broadly defined set of public goals. The treatment of individuals, I think, does raise questions about fairness, and white males who are excluded have a right to be concerned about. Does that make any sense to you? I'm trying to draw a distinction between blindness, so we're going to be colorblind when we deal with individuals, and indifference. So we're going to be unconcerned about racial matters as we go about our public business. Blindness, I think, is eminently defensible. I think is what I've been arguing for a long time. And I think it's consistent with the Supreme Court's 2023 affirmative action decision, as well as with the anti-DEI reaction against the excesses of race-obsessed public and college and so on administration, business organizations and whatnot. Blindness is one thing, but indifference is a completely different thing. It's saying, I see that this community, which is mostly Black and brown, is desperate, violent, underserved, in need of various things. And I don't feel motivated to do anything about it. I don't allow the racial aspect of the history and the ongoing circumstance to influence how it is that I want to think about my reaction to the needs of this community. I don't know. Maybe I'm splitting hairs here. Do you think so?
No, I don't. I know what you mean. I mean, there's a larger picture, which is the Supreme Court decision, and then this. There is clearly a movement against what I think both of us would think of as having become excess attention paid to these sorts of things, to the point that fairness was a legitimate question, despite the fact that there will always be people who can see nothing in 23 and this now but racism on the march. There will always be those people, and they'll be overrepresented in media organs. But I think that's a rather blinkered view. We're having a national conversation, and we're trimming excesses and swinging a pendulum back into the middle. But yeah, the question is, what can still be done? Is everything a matter of stirring stuff up? Is everything a matter of unfairness to white people like Hegseth, et cetera? And there needs to be a conversation about that. I would hope that people who want to celebrate Black History Month, frankly, I think Black History Month is not a bad thing. It's super obsolete, superannuated. I was going to say it's obsolete. It's just that it's not 1970. It's not that we need to have a special month where we pay attention to Black history. We pay attention to Black history all year. And by we, I mean the United States. There's no reason for there to be a month. Even 10 years ago, I think it was, Morgan Freeman said, why does there have to be only 1 month? And the truth is, there isn't. The lesson has been learned. Black history is not under-attended to in the United States' thinking culture. And so, but it doesn't hurt anything. And I would hope that people would push back against that. There's no reason to get rid of Black History Month as some sort of scourge. And it makes an awful lot of people feel good. It reminds us of certain things. So it's just a matter of what needs to be gotten rid of. And I don't think you're splitting hairs, but what you're talking about is something that I think most of the people responsible for this would not be capable of quite wrapping their heads around. And that's what the problem is.